The next day, Letty and Atticus wake up, only they don't find the woman. And they go to Montrose and ask, where is she? And Montrose tells them that he let her go. And not only did he let her go, but he let her go with the pages. And when he says that, Tick beats the shit out of him. I mean, has to be restrained. He is irate. He storms down to the basement where Letty's having that dark room and starts frantically looking over all the pictures she's developed because he wants to know if she took any pictures of the pages. And Letty's trying to calm him down, and he finally sort of does that when he realizes that she's holding the bat. So they both go their separate ways, and Tick cools off, and later that night they link up. And she lets him know that she did in fact take pictures of the pages, she just hasn't developed them yet. Tick thanks her and apologizes for the way he acted, and she asks him, if I wasn't there, would you have killed him? And he admits that he's thought about it plenty of times, mostly after he used to beat him as a kid, but he never really thought he would have that anger in him, and he didn't find it until he went to war. She tells him that that side scares her, but she can't be that scared because the two end up hooking up that night. And afterwards, they end up heading back to Letty's house and developing the pictures, but Tick falls asleep and has a dream where he's chasing his great-great-grandmother through the Braithwaite estate, just like he actually did, only this time he gets lit on fire. So he wakes up from this dream in a panic, and it's all because he's been running himself ragged trying to figure out the language of Adam. And he has been able to figure out 11 of the letters, but 11 isn't 26, and he's frustrated by it. And Letty says aloud that it would have been a lot easier with the woman's help, but she understands why Montrose let her go. I mean, if they had kept her against her will, they're no better than Titus. And that's when Tick tells her what really happened to the woman. And Letty is mortified and shocked about the fact that Montrose actually killed this woman. So Tick tries to calm her down, saying he probably didn't know what he was doing. He was just protecting us. But Letty has had enough, saying this language is the devil's work. But Tick defends the language, saying it's not inherently evil. It's what we do with it. And all we're doing with it is trying to protect ours. How can that be evil? And Letty says, well, look what Montrose did to protect you. Letty goes upstairs and takes a bath, and Tick goes to check on her and apologizes for all the bad that he's brought onto her. But he says that he is trying to bring some good. But Letty kind of looks at him perplexed, saying, what does that even mean? Because the last time I thought we were going somewhere, you had packed your bags and were heading down to Florida. But Tick doesn't answer that question, instead telling Letty that there was a girl in Korea, and their relationship ended in a pretty strange way. And Tick has called this girl before and hung up, and this is the same girl that visited him in the Braithwaite estate and was attacking him. So even though they haven't seen each other in a while, she is still very much a part of his life. And while he doesn't know if he loved her because he never really had an example of it, he tells Letty that he knows what they have is special. So he ends the night on a good note, heads back down to the basement, and continues to work on the language of Adam. And he suddenly has a breakthrough, and it is very unsettling to him. He runs over to the phone and calls the girl in Korea. And when she answers, Tick says, how did you know? And she says, do you believe me now? You should have listened to me. And Tick asks her, what are you? But she never answers. She just hangs up the phone. And it leaves Tick's hand trembling, holding the decoded message that just says, die. Now, after getting the shit beat out of him, Montrose confirmed a rumor that was going around town by Tree that he's gay because he heads over to Sammy's place and hooks up with him. But you can tell that Montrose isn't really comfortable with it. And that night, Sammy takes him to a drag show where Sammy performs, but Montrose is still not all that comfortable. And it takes a little bit of time, but finally Montrose gets more and more comfortable and accepts the fact that, yes, he is gay. And it allows Montrose to kind of shed that skin and let loose. But Montrose isn't the only one who sheds some skin. Because Ruby wakes up after sleeping with William, only it's not the Ruby that we know because it's Ruby in a white woman's body. And as you can imagine, she's pretty freaked out. She starts walking around the south side of Chicago and everyone's staring at her, wondering what this woman's doing. Because she's disheveled looking, she's kind of muttering to herself, and she's telling people that she is Ruby, although no one believes her because she's in the body of a white woman. And a black boy bumps into her and asks her if she's okay, but when that happens, a police car that's rolling by ends up stopping, pulling Ruby to the side and telling her, I'm sorry, ma'am, you'll be okay, but then demanding to know what the black boy did to her. And it takes a few times for Ruby to say he did nothing for them to finally let the kid go. They put Ruby in the car and start driving her back to William's place, even though she's begging not to go. But they tell her, your husband called us, he told us about your episodes, we're taking you back where you belong. But before she can really put up much of a fight, she starts convulsing. She has no idea what's going on. And William takes her into the house, and the seizures are getting worse and worse, and she says, I don't want to die. But the pain is getting too much, and she starts screaming. So William turns on a TV where, ironically, the newscaster is talking about cicadas that are going to attack the Chicago area after shedding their skin. And that's what Ruby does, because William cuts her open, allowing her to shed the skin of a white woman and get back to the Ruby we've come to know. So Ruby gets cleaned off and is laying down, and William comes in and starts talking about butterflies and how they evolve through metamorphosis. And he wanted to apply the same metamorphosis to humans, but he was laughed at by the scientific community. But then he ran into Hiram Epstein. And Epstein just wanted to understand the universe, so he created these doorways, but they were magical doorways. And Ruby asks him, did I die to become that white woman? And he tells her no. The potion that's used just mimics the metamorphosis. It wears off over time. And that is the convulsions that Ruby was experiencing. And all of this, understandably so, is blowing Ruby's mind. The fact that magic exists, and the fact that she woke up to become a white woman. And what really amazed her was while she was walking down the street disheveled and looking kind of crazy, she was treated like a human being. And it was all because of the white privilege she was experiencing. But even after all of that, Ruby isn't really interested in continuing the relationship and asks if she's free to go. And William says, yeah, you're free to go. You're free to do whatever you want. But William says he has some meetings and he leaves the room, but before he does so, he leaves a bottle of the potion with a stack of cash. And curiosity gets the best of Ruby again, and she takes the potion to once again walk around town experiencing life as a white woman. And she has a great day. She gets ice cream. She doesn't even have to pay for it because she's white. And anytime you get free ice cream, that's a win. So she goes back home, transforms back to the original Ruby, and is taking a bath, and in walks William. And she asks him, why are you going to share magic with me? And he tells her that she now owes him a favor. And it's a small favor, but he has a female friend that's going to need something of her very soon. Until then, she's free to go as a white woman, as a black woman, whatever she wants. So the next day, she transforms back to the white woman and heads to Marshall and Fields, the department store that she's applied to many times but never even gotten an interview at. And gets an interview immediately with the manager, who is looking over her resume, blown away that she's applying for a job on the floor. So instead of offering her a job on the floor, he offers her assistant manager position, which Ruby immediately accepts. He then asks her, though, how she feels about working with black people. Because ever since Marshall and Fields lifted their restriction on hiring black people, they've had a few people quit after they hired their girl Tamara. And Ruby tells them, I'm fine with it. I mean, if she's qualified, what does it matter? But Ruby has to go because she's transforming back into her original self. And she ends up doing that in the basement of the department store. But hey, it doesn't matter because she got the gig. And the next day, she starts the job, and the manager is a little too friendly with her, but she kind of brushes that off and introduces herself to Tamara. And at first, she's very nice to her and cordial, and starts asking about the qualifications that she has that got her the job. But Ruby gets really mad when she finds out that Tamara had no qualifications. She didn't even have a high school degree. And considering they passed over Ruby with this exceptional resume, Ruby ends up turning on Tamara and snapping at her. She then goes to see how the other half lives and hangs out with about 4 white women that work in the store during their lunch break. And she asks them if the manager there has ever gotten a little too flirtatious with them, but they kind of laugh her off saying, no, he's a choir boy. And as they're dancing around and kind of having fun, one of them mentions that she's going to say something that probably everybody's thinking. Let's hope no more Tamaras come through the door. And Ruby says, well, let's hope that if they do, they're more qualified than her. But the woman who made the original comment says, well, of course she's not qualified, she's a Negro. And Ruby is visibly annoyed, but she's holding it in because she's remembering, I'm now a white woman. And another woman in the group asks, do you think that Tamara can take us to the south side to go to a bar? You seem friendly with her. But Ruby looks at her and says, why would you want to go there? I mean, I've been to the south side of Chicago. It's not that great. And all of these women are amazed that Ruby, who in their minds is a white woman, has actually ventured to the south side of Chicago, acting like it's North Korea. And one of the women says, I can't believe you went there. Were you scared around those? And Ruby just cuts her off and says, you mean the people? But the women don't even know what they're saying, and they just laugh it off, saying, Tamara will definitely take us. After work that day, everybody's leaving, and Ruby gets picked up by William. And when all the women see William, Ruby immediately becomes the envy of all of them. But he's not just doing this out of the kindness of his own heart. He's doing it because he's calling in that favor. And that favor is going to be for Ruby to attend a party at the local lodge that night, posing as one of the help staff. And Ruby isn't too thrilled about the fact that she's going to be surrounded by a bunch of white people serving them hors d'oeuvres. But William says, go there, do the job, and wait for Christina to show up and give you instructions. So Ruby does that. She's handing out hors d'oeuvres, including to the police captain who's there. And you overhear the police chief say that it was the demand of all of the members that he take over the club. But finally, Ruby sees Christina. And Christina hands her a rock with a symbol on it and says, hide this in the police captain's office. But Ruby doesn't want to do that. As a black woman, she doesn't want to get caught snooping around the police captain's office. She feels like she's going to get killed. But Christina pleads with her, saying that if you care for William and what he's given you, you'll do this. Because William was the rightful heir to this lodge. And the police captain tried to kill him, shooting him in the back and dumping him in the river. And Christina found him and brought him back to health, but the police captain thinks that William died. And Christina tells Ruby that with her help, by simply hiding this rock, William can get his revenge. So Ruby agrees and puts the rock in a drawer, but then she hears the police captain, along with a couple other people, coming into the room, and she's forced to hide in a closet. And when she opens the closet, she finds a guy there who's been beaten to a bloody pulp, who is unable to scream because his tongue has been cut out. But unfortunately for Ruby, there's nowhere else to hide, and she has to get in the closet with the guy. And she's listening to the conversation, waiting for them to leave, and the police captain takes off his shirt, and he has a bunch of weird markings on his body, not like Williams, but kind of looks like he's been burnt. The police captain continues to talk about lodge business with the other members, saying that if Christina wants the orrery, we're going to let her bring it right to us. But the issue is the guy with no tongue is making a lot of noise in that closet to the dismay of Ruby. Luckily for Ruby, though, they never check on him, with one of the cohorts just asking the police captain, hey, has that guy given up the location of the stolen loot? But the police captain says, no, not yet, but he will. And then everybody heads off, and Ruby's able to get home that night. So the next day, she transforms back into a white woman, heads to work, and sees Tamara on the floor and ends up reaming her out for not doing her job properly. She can't simply be as good as a white person. She needs to be better than them. Because if she's not, that's how you end up in a closet with your tongue cut out. And the conversation is getting so animated that the manager actually comes over and asks if everything's okay. But Ruby says, no, everything's fine. Tamara actually agreed to take us to the south side tonight so we can all let our hair down. And obviously Tamara didn't do this and has no interest in it, but she doesn't really have a choice. So Tamara accompanies Ruby, the manager, and 4 white women to a south side bar so they can have fun. But Ruby's not having fun at all. In fact, she's miserable. And she goes out to the alley and transforms back into her real self. But as she's doing so, she sees the manager forcing himself on Tamara. And Tamara is pushing him away, saying she doesn't want to do anything, but he continues to persist until finally Tamara hits him. So Ruby files that away and heads back to William's place. And she never ends up cleaning up. She's just sitting on the couch covered in blood and dead skin and whatnot. When, to her surprise, out of the basement comes Christina. And Ruby tells her that's the only door in this house that's locked. So what's down there? But Christina doesn't answer the question, instead telling her, I've been where you are. And Ruby cuts her off and says, shut the hell up. You can't even relate to where I've been. And considering I've been in your situation, I've come to realize that the only thing that white women are disillusioned with is themselves. And Christina thinks about it and says, no, you're right. We want to be you want to be us. But you misunderstood William's invitation. He wasn't inviting you to be white. He was inviting you to be whatever you wanted to be. It's an invitation to do whatever the hell you want. And that's exactly what Ruby does the next day. She marches into her boss's office and says, I'm sorry, I have to quit. And he's taken aback, asking why. And she says, well, it's because I'm sexually attracted to you. And I realize that it's not appropriate for us to have a relationship if I work under you. So I'm quitting so I can bang your brains out. And the manager is all for this. And she starts tying him up with some S&M stuff, but he's just going along with it, including licking the heel of her stiletto, which is just, it's not healthy in any decade. But it's a good thing he licked the heel because at least he lubed it up. Ruby then puts a belt around his neck and has him wiggle backwards, get on his stomach, and she takes that stiletto and shoves it repeatedly in his ass over and over and over again. And as she's doing so, she's transforming back to the original Ruby. So this guy, bloodied, beaten, screaming, and in pain, finally is able to turn over to his back to see, to his utter shock, that the woman doing this wasn't the white woman that he thought. Instead, it's a black woman covered in blood. And Ruby looks at him and says, I just wanted you to know that I'm the one who did this to you. And then she walks out. She heads home that night, cleans up, and waits for William to show up. And when he does, she says, all right, I want to know what's in the basement. You and your woman friend keep coming from there at all hours of the night, but it's locked. But William says, no, not right now. I'll tell you in a minute. And then he collapses on the floor because William is going through a metamorphosis of his own. And when he sheds his skin, to Ruby's surprise, William was actually Christina Braithwaite the entire time. Thank you so much for watching this recap. Please consider subscribing to the channel. If you don't see the next video up in the corner, don't worry, I'll get it up in a couple days. Hit thumbs up if you liked the video, hit thumbs down if you didn't, and be nice in the comments section.